Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine and welcome to the world of Cinsaut. Now, if you're a slightly older South African, you might remember the days when Cinsaut was dime a dozen. It was the poor man's wine, it was drunk by university students. Cinsaut used to be the most planted wine in South Africa. And the heritage of Cinsaut is really important in terms of the South African wine identity because Cinsaut is one of the two parents of Pinotage. It's also known as Hermitage. So Cinsaut has got a really strong place in South Africa's wine history. But come the sort of 80s, 90s, Cinsaut fell away. People held it in poor regard. It wasn't terribly popular internationally, and Cinsaut really just fell off the beaten track. But it's back with a bang. You can probably thank Ibn Sadi for that. In 2009, he produced the first single variety Cinsaut in South Africa. He was the only guy doing just the one varietal. There was plenty of it floating about at the back end of blends. But Cinsaut on its own, 2009, depending on your view at the time, it was either very brave or extremely stupid. Looking at it now, it was not just brave, it was visionary, because Cinsaut is on the up and up and up, and we're finding more of it, and why not? It's a grape that's light in colour, it's a delicate fragrance, and in that sort of Grenache Pinot Noir mould, it's a grape that really lends itself, with the right winemaker putting his head to it, to produce something extremely special. And we've got 4 of them this week that I think make a pretty good case for the rise of Cinsaut, starting with one that's reasonably entry level. This is the Leeuwenkuil. Now, one of the elements of Cinsaut is that as a grape itself, it's pretty good at resisting drought. So kind of like most Cape Townians at the moment, doing its best to survive without too much water. What that often results in is a more robust grape, and that in turn can give you some really great flavour. And Cinsaut, although a light grape, although delicate, does still have a certain intensity to it. And this is a terrific example. It's out in the Swartland. Leeuwenkuil, just about as big a wine growing entity as there is. They've got between 12 and 1300 hectares of vines under growth. Now, a lot of that goes to cooperatives, goes to other wine estates, other wine labels, people making their own wine at home. Wine themselves, they've only been doing for about 10 years or so, although the estate has been going for 300 odd years. But what they've been making, they've been doing really well. And you might have heard of their Heritage Syrah. It's one of the better wines South Africa's ever made, and just won a great accolade at the Old Mutual Wine Trophy show. This is a little down the pecking order, but as a Cinsaut, it's a great example of the wine that in the 1980s used to get a lot of students out of bed with a very sore head. Now, this is real blue-collar wine. A lot of these grapes are from bush vines, dry vines. The grapes allowed to ripen at their own speed. And so it's a wine that's got a really natural and an unforced feel to it in terms of how it's made. It's not terribly expensive. This is, about 70 odd rand a bottle. So if you're looking to start your Cinsaut experiment at an entry level, you could do worse than start off here. And for 70 rand or thereabouts, that's damn good value. It's got exactly what you want from a Cinsaut. There's that softness without being bland. There's that little bit of fruit punching through it, and overall a nice silky texture. Not completely smooth silk, but then it's not the most expensive Cinsaut, nor is it a Cinsaut that's meant to be one that just glides across the palate. I think it has a deliberately slightly chunkier feel to it in terms of the way that it's made, using those bush vines and dry vines. But it's a nice, robust wine in a Cinsaut context, and you can see that it's the kind of wine that would have led into the early days of Pinotage. So a nice start with the Cinsaut experiment. So one Cinsaut down. That one was from the west coast. This time we are in Robertson and Rietvallei and their Dark Cin Cinsaut. So again, Robertson, a slightly drier area. The Cinsaut grape is at home in those slightly drier areas. These guys are probably best known for a rather nice Cab Franc that they do, but they also take some pride, and rightly so, in their Cinsaut. It's fun packaging. They've had some fun with the name as well, the Dark Cin, and so there's a sense of wicked indulgence to what you are about to drink. I really like the packaging. It's about 150 rand a bottle, so it's a little more expensive than the one you've just had, but the looks and the name certainly appeal. Now, one of the things I love about wine is the language. There are a few spaces, few mediums where you can be more over the top, more self-indulgent, more ridiculous in terms of how you describe things. And sometimes there's an element of functional once you understand wine enough and somebody tells you that they pick up some burnt peppercorns on an autumn afternoon in Latvia, you know what they're talking about. But quite often it's words for the sake of words. And as long as you're not taking it too seriously, I've got absolutely no problem with that. It's part of the fun of drinking and sharing and enjoying wine. And there's a great example here. And this is not to knock Rietvallei, it's just to have some fun with what they're doing. And I think they're having some fun as well, because on the back of their wine, Dark Cin is as enchanting as it is captivating, with a touch of the mysterious. Now that sounds awesome and tells you absolutely nothing about what the wine's actually like, other than you're probably going to have some fun with it. And that's exactly what I'd want. It's not telling you that it's going to taste great with lamb or have an innuendo of strawberry. It's just telling you that this is a wine to go out and enjoy with a smile on your face. It's as enchanting as it is captivating, with a touch of the mysterious. There's certainly a darkness to it. It has that dark fruit to it, that ripeness to it. It's a slightly more moody Cinsaut than the one we've just had. A little more expensive. You'd expect it to have a little more going for it. It's smoother than the previous one. And again, it's a really nice example of a grape that's fast coming back into fashion. And again, with this one, you can see why. Then on to Cinsaut number 3. And this is one I've heard a lot about. Ian O'Dear is the guy behind Adoro wines. He's made some great wine there. What he's done here is follow up on the Grenache that first caught attention in his Old Vine series, and he's gone to some old vines for the Cinsaut. And as we'll find out in the wine to follow, there's a real link between Cinsaut and old vines as the wine comes back into fashion. Ian has a great reputation. He's a very passionate winemaker, and what he's done here with the old vines is take advantage of some of the history and the heritage of South African wine, seen something that's in its second cycle of life, so to speak, and taken advantage, by all accounts, extremely successfully. Now, the first thing I notice here is the colour. The previous two Cinsauts may be a little darker than what I was expecting. Because of the slightly lighter grape, I'd expect that more kind of Pinot Noir Grenache colour to it, and this is what you've got here, that burnt rust, the slightly lighter ruby, and it's a cool colour. It's a colour that really appeals to me, probably because of my medical obsession with Pinot Noir, but it's one that really catches my eye. And it's got a really nice floral nose to it as well. Soft, but lovely. And just that very, very soft sweetness to it as well. This does look nice. Oh, that's outstanding. That's a really, really nice example of Cinsaut. A little bit of sweetness, that slight sort of very, very delicate chocolatey fudgy feel, but a little bit of pepper as well, but all on a nice silky smooth platform. It's a multifaceted wine that takes that Cinsaut grape and makes it into something very special indeed. Ian O'Dear, your old vines have done you justice, and you've done justice to them in turn. And then on to something I am really fortunate to be tasting. This is Die Ou Treffer, and it is the only bottle of its kind in existence, because this hasn't actually been launched yet, and in their haste to get it ready for me to taste, the guys at Die Kleine Wijn Koöp, who I adore, they're fantastic, they're so passionate about wine and they have so much fun with it. They made up one single label just for me, and they got the date wrong. That should be 52, not 53. So this is a one of a kind, so I'm greatly honoured. I loved Die Treffer on it. When I was at university, coming down from Zimbabwe, where I went to school, I spoke no Afrikaans, and one of my best mates at university, Andy Jury, every Christmas gave me a copy of Die Beste Danstreffers in die Wereld, volume 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's where I first encountered treffers, and what I love about the 1952-53, in relation to the previous wine we tasted, is that old vine component. These grapes are from Bellevue, and the owner at Bellevue had been planning to get rid of them for years. He just hadn't got round to it. He could maybe get 200 rand a tonne if he was lucky. Nobody was interested in Cinsaut. And then things changed. That Ibn Sadi moment was something of a catalyst. Now, 8,000–10,000 rand a tonne. He's starting to put some money back into Cinsaut as it enjoys a new lease of life. And that's only going to increase when people make world-class Cinsaut, as I really believe we do in South Africa. That Nadir was a terrific example. And this, I suspect, will head very firmly in the same direction. So a quick note on the cork first. Have a look at that. That is a map of the Cape. They're good marketing of this lot, so they've thrown in their website as well. And then how's that as well? Their symbol is the acorn, and they've popped that on as well. The attention to detail is fantastic, right the way through, from the labels to the corks to how they actually make the wine. Well, these guys don't have their own wine estate. They look for different places to bring in parcels of grapes, and that allows them to pick and choose areas that they feel will really reflect both the terroir they're chasing and the kind of wine they want to make. They did something similar with the Grenache we had on the show a few months ago. That was from Pickenierskloof, which I think might be the world's finest Grenache area at the moment. And then there's this Cinsaut. The colour is even paler than the last one. Great softness. That's also reflected in the alcohol content. This is a 12.5% alcohol wine, so it's nice and light, especially for a red wine, and that again speaks to the character and the nature of Cinsaut. Oh, that is also absolutely lovely. It's going to be a tough call between the Nadir and the Ou Treffer as to which one I go and buy my next case of. I suspect I'll just buy both. Much of what I said about the Nadir applies to this one as well. That complexity, but at a very subtle level. There's a very delicate fruit to it, also that very delicate sweetness. Again, that slightly peppery feel, but just so smooth, so delightful. And also a wine, I mean, this is a 2016, so this is not even walking yet. Another couple of years, and this is just going to flourish and blossom into something quite beautiful. And I'll happily wait until then, but in that time I will be spreading the gospel, because as much as I love Pinot Noir, and I drink a lot of it very happily, I think we've got something really special going on with Cinsaut. And because we've got that history, not just the fact that it forms part of the Pinotage heritage, but also that we used to grow so much of it, we used to make so much of it, it might not always have been held in the highest of esteem, but it's certainly part of what we've drunk in South Africa for so long. And to see it undergoing a revival, to see winemakers having so much fun with it and making such great wine with it is really, really pleasing to see. So when you head off next time to buy some wine and look at your monthly allocation, put some Cinsaut in there, whether it's something at the lower end of the spectrum just to find your way around, or something from Nadir or from Die Kleine Wijn Koöp. You're not going to go wrong. This is South African wine shining bright and doing us proud. Enjoy.